and welcome to another episode of the Innovation Conversation. Today we are joined by Laura Iriarte. Laura, welcome.
Hi, Ricardo. Thank you very much for this invitation. And I'm very happy to be here.
It's a pleasure having you here. Laura, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Sure. I am head of PR and communications at 0100 Conferences. We organize networking opportunities in the investors world, right? So we work in the private equity and venture capital industry. And I also have a podcast, the ESG and Impact Talks, where I talk to investors about these topics. We release an episode every 2 weeks. So I'm very, very passionate about these topics.
Interesting. And, how did you get started in this industry?
Well, actually, I've always been I've been always part of the financial services world, right? I started like 10 years ago, actually, like working for the Banks Association in Chile. And while doing this, I also started a course on community relations in the extractive industry, which is very specific, right? But I was living in Chile. I even did like a project on financial inclusion in the mining industry. I was very passionate. I've always been very passionate about this. I had worked in sustainability for many years for an airline, then in Chile as well for a bank, in Banco de Chile, which is the largest bank in Chile. And my job I was in charge of the financial inclusion strategy for the bank. I've always done it from the more of the commercial side of the financial services. And last year I joined the 0100 conferences and went directly into the investors world. Right? Okay. And even though it's all about the financial services industry, this is a very specific, very niche world. And I really love it because it's the one that actually makes the decisions on where this world is heading to, right? Where VCs and private equities invest, is where the innovation is going to happen, right?
How did you find the transition? Was it easy? Was it hard?
Well, I had 3 years of doing a different thing, away from the financial services world. And it made me realize that I really like this industry. So, I think the transition was that. I didn't transition from doing financial inclusion and financial wellness into the investors world, but I did this other transition, which was from the financial services world to this other design and innovation world, and then coming back to the financial world, Yeah. And I think that I've been learning a lot because I know in general I have an MBA from I Business School. It's a very entrepreneurship oriented school here in Spain. So I did have a lot of venture capital classmates, and a lot of people from my generation either founded a company or went to work for a VC, So I did know a lot about this world, but I didn't actually dive deeper,
Yeah.
And now I'm all in, and not only but I'm all in from what I like, that is the ESG and impact part, So I'm more than happy.
When you talk with investors, how concerned are they with the whole ESG thing? Are they very much, is it something that they actually look out for, or is it still something on the back of their mind overall?
Well, it depends, no? And one thing is ESG and another thing is impact. And I talk about both topics. And it depends on the type of investor, right? If you talk to a VC fund, that's an impact one. The level of conversation, it's completely different to another that's more generalist and that's actually more ESG focused, I think the industry as a whole, it's very, very, very concerned about this because they have to. The regulation is asking them to start doing something about it, right? You have this whole CSRD, and then you have this whole SODR here in Europe, and they have to actually make sure they are being compliant with the regulation. No, I haven't had conversations yet with funds or investors from the US, for example.
Yeah.
I did have the chance to talk to European funds that invest in the US, and I can tell you that they do struggle with portfolio companies in the US and with LPs. I mean, with LPs in the US, it's not the struggle, but the conversation is different, right? Whereas here in Europe, where the rules are there, they are for everyone.
Yeah.
No, they are not easy because they are new, they are changing, but at least you have them. So we are all going and like towards the same direction, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
But when you think about like on a more international level, okay, yeah, you have the US, but then you also have another emerging countries, no, where the challenge is different, no, and investors are either raising from these countries or investing in these countries. So it's very complicated. For example, if you're an investor that that raises money in Europe, it's very hard for you to deploy it in Latin America. If you have all this regulation, if you are, for example, an SFDR Article 9 fund, you know, you cannot. You need all this data to be available for you to report, and it's very hard to do it like in a market like the Latin American market, where this is not a priority and the rules are not the same. So I think this is a very interesting topic, and it's gaining more relevance. And it's also very confusing at the same time because of the new regulation. I think that everyone has like different approach to it, and that's what the whole new regulation is trying to like clear up a little bit, no? Like to make sure that we all speak the same language and we're all on the same page when it comes to talking about impact and ESG.
I was just wondering because I normally talk with a lot of startups, and they always curious on how hard it is to actually get investment from other countries and other regions. How do you normally find that? Is it hard for investors to actually put down money in other? Not so much. How should I put this? Is there any advice you can give to startups if they want to get some money from European investors that are building something that is really impactful, it's really going to change the world, but they just don't happen to be in Europe? They happen to be in Latin America. Is there like a magic pill or formula they can do or take?
Well, European investors, they have very compliant with the European regulation and with what their LPs are asking for. So if you're a Latin American company, maybe you should also like make sure that you understand what they need and what they have been requested from their LPs. That way you can actually maybe give them the idea that you will be able to deliver that information. I think that could be an option, because in the end it's about the capacity of the VCs to actually like deliver and report the ESG data that they need to report. I mean, they have to be compliant, otherwise they cannot like get the money. And nowadays it's very hard to get the money. So like it's like this cycle, right? I mean, if you want to be compliant, you have to do this, and if you want to do this, then you have to look for companies that are able to actually help you in this transparency data. So yes, it's complicated.
I was just about to ask you, are you finding it that most companies complain that it's actually very hard to get money right now? Or on the contrary, it's a good moment because everyone's talking about these topics?
Well, it's very hard to find money like for everyone, right? Not nowadays, since like last year was a disaster in terms of fundraising, and I think this year is also being very hard. I mean, I see it at every conference that we organize, and there's a big need for fundraising, and LPs are being very, very careful about it, and it's tough. I can say that the people that I've talked to that do more impact investing, they say, yes, it is hard, but we feel it's less hard for us, Like
Hmm.
they might have it a bit easier, but under the idea that it's very hard right now, you know?
Yeah.
So because there's this need, I mean, like there's this climate, the climate change. There's this energy transition. These topics, I mean, they're just like starting. Many international, many like institutional LPs and entities are really looking for ways to take a part on this and
Hmm.
invest in solutions that will actually tackle climate change and help us like to build a more like sustainable world, right?
Hmm.
So probably that's the reason why they have a bit more like they have it a bit more easy,
Hmm.
but it's still very hard.
And how, from companies from within Europe, are there any limitations? Because obviously, I'm based in UK. I know you're based in Spain. Do you find that, for example, for British companies, is it hard to get funding in Europe, or the other way around? How is that happening, or not at
I,
all? Or is not actually it's not an issue?
well, I think that in general, European VCs are very pan-European. You
Mm.
know, like they invest all across Europe. About UK, I cannot give you. I mean, I'm not sure. I have spoken to people that invests only in UK, but when it comes to the rest of like Europe, like most VCs invest in all across Europe.
Of
You
course,
know,
yeah. Hmm.
like they start maybe focusing on their own countries, but then they end up if they want to grow, if they want to find the best startups and actually and also the raise funds from other places,
Hmm.
they start investing and fundraising all across Europe.
Interesting. And is there, when you talk with all these VCs and stuff, did they ever tell you, if a company does this, I'm never going to invest in them? Or if they do this, I'm 100% going to invest in them? Is there any like red flags they always tell you, I'm always on the lookout for, or stuff like that?
Well, more than red flags is about like the company founders have to know that all VCs have their own strategy, right?
Hmm.
So you have to do your homework, no? Like go to their website, see what they have been investing in, and try to adjust your pitch to what they actually are looking for. No, sometimes founders just like throw themselves to like anyone, and in the end, that's annoying for the VCs because they are always like they are always being maybe like chased by too many
Yes.
founders. No, I just attended South Summit last week,
Hmm.
here in Madrid, and well, I mean, the ones that had the investors tag, they were kind of like a bit overwhelmed,
Yeah.
because there was like all these founders with these great ideas trying to get in touch with them, but in the end, if you are you're pitching your I don't know AI solution to climate
Hmm.
tech found that only invests in whatever, like that's
Yeah.
not AI related. I mean, you're just wasting your time and
Their
the
time as
business
well. Yeah.
time. Yes, so you have to do your homework and of course, I did hear. I mean, actually, from a conversation I had, I don't remember when. Someone told me that they have to actually show and prove that they know what they're talking about.
Hmm.
So if they don't know what they're talking about, or they show any like ignorance on the topic they are pitching,
Hmm.
that's like okay, red flag, goodbye, because it's
Yeah.
it's very complicated, and the more specialized the
Hmm.
VC, the harder it is for a founder to actually talk to the VC, right?
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. But it does make sense. I mean, you wouldn't want to have a founder in an area they don't fully understand, and then to have them run the company in an area they don't fully understand with someone else's money. That's a recipe for disaster, right? That's not going to work out well.
And this is coming from like top down actually, because there are more and more LPs
Hmm.
that are very specialized. Like I have interviewed an LP that only invests in biotech. You know,
Okay.
so and he knows about it and he's an expert on it. So imagine if he only invests in VCs that do this. So for him to talk to the VC, I mean, the level of conversation that they are going to have,
Yes.
it's going to be very high.
Mm-hmm.
So the VC's level of conversation with the portfolio companies has to be that high as well,
Yeah.
And I've spoken, for example, I've heard some family offices saying, like, we don't like generalists because we need people to actually like commit to a sector and specialize, because that's the way you can actually think that or say that they really know what they're talking about,
Yeah.
But this morning I had a conversation with energy transition VC,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked her this question, like, what
Yeah.
do you think about generalist funds and like
Mm-hmm.
that you're a very very specialized fund? What's your take on this? And she did give me a really great answer. She said that, I mean, they are very specialized,
Mm-hmm.
and these very specialized funds are kind of new, because then you have other VC funds that have been around for 20, 30 years, and have invested in many, many companies, had heard thousands of pitches, no?
Mm-hmm.
So they know a lot about like startups.
Yeah.
So she said, like, the cool thing about this is that I think that there's space for both, you know,
Mm.
because I mean, you never invest. VCs invest on on a portion of stakes. So in the end, they don't normally go by themselves, but there are also other VCs investing on the same company. So the fact that you have the very specialized one that knows all the technical part, but then you have the other one that knows all about like how this startup ecosystem and how founders work, etc. Is also like a good. Like they complement each other,
Mm-hmm.
which is a point of view that I didn't have before this
Interesting.
conversation this
Yeah.
morning. So I think it's very interesting, like to speak to people and ask these questions and understand like there's a space for everyone, But yeah, we need founders to be very prepared and passionate about their topics, and when you're passionate about something, you do a lot of research, you read about it, you talk about it, like you really care for it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's hard to get into the VC world, to start working as a VC, or to actually get your foot in the door overall?
Well, I think now it's very hard, at least harder than it was like a few years ago, right? When there
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of money and a lot of opportunities to actually raise money. I
Yeah.
think now it's very hard, and only those that had like a really good strategy are the ones that are being able to still to keep fundraising in the long term are the ones that are gonna like stay around, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think it's very. I mean, being a VC it's very hard. Like being, I don't know, if, like entering the world. I don't know. I haven't thought about it, but being one, it's
Yeah.
very hard. I mean, I see them at our conferences, and it's because of the fundraising, right?
Yeah.
That's a very tough part, and it's never. I mean, and it's always going to be there, right? You always need to fundraise. Like maybe okay, yeah, you have to stop fundraising that much when you are already ready with the fund, but then
Mm-hmm.
you'll be fundraising again. So you have to like know how to do it, and I think that's that's something that some VCs didn't know before,
Mm-hmm.
because it depends. I think, I mean, what's happening here in Spain, for example, from the conversations I have had, is that many VC funds, they were small. They had their LPs,
Mm-hmm.
very like their loyal LPs.
Yeah.
So they will always get the funding. But when things got harder, and in order to also be able to grow,
Mm-hmm.
we had to start like going out
Yeah.
and fundraise, And this is like something kind of new.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn, like know how to do it. It's not easy. I mean, I always say it reminded me to the times when I was a business journalist
Mm-hmm.
working for a newspaper in Chile, and I had to basically like chase all the CEOs from the companies that I wanted to talk to, you
Yeah.
know. So when you're fundraising, this is kind of like similar, they have to chase the LPs, and that's very hard. I mean, it's not easy. You have to like be have a really like a personality that can you cannot be shy, you know,
Hmm.
because if you're shy, how are you going to approach this person? You have to be very like genuine, but also like people have to trust you, because in
Yeah.
the end,
They're giving you money, right? So they need to trust
you
you.
are going to ask them for money.
Yeah.
So you have to be very patient, because it's not like you're going to ask for money today and you're going to get the money tomorrow. I mean,
Hmm.
it's about building relationships, and these relationships can take years, you know, like 2 to 3 years of talking to these LPs in order to get the money. So it's very hard to be a VC.
What about family offices? Because family offices is always a bit of a mystery, I think, for most people. They don't fully get how they work, and they don't fully get how to approach them, or if they should approach them in the first place. How do you find that connection?
Well, it depends. No, there are family offices that make direct investments,
Hmm.
you know, and they're mostly, for example, family offices that keep their wealth with their specific business in in specific industry, or many also other, for example, tech entrepreneurs that made their own wealth as well.
Hmm.
So I think that you have to do research. It's not easy, because there's not that much information available out there. But you can always find some,
Yeah.
talk to people, you know. Of course, there are other family offices that invest in funds, you know.
Hmm.
They are, and because of I think it's also related to knowledge, right? Like, if you don't know that much about something,
Hmm.
you can do it through a VC or through a private equity, right? Because in the end they do know, so you
Yeah.
kind of like lowering the risk, you know. Whereas when you invest directly, you are putting your money into something that, I mean, if it works, it's awesome. But if it doesn't work, you just like, and you might not know that much about it, no?
Yeah.
But we have been working a lot with family offices, and there are more family offices interested in investing into the alternative assets world, you know,
Hmm.
and private equity, like buyout private equity, and venture capital is it's one of these new spaces for them to invest in,
Hmm.
you know. But yes, it depends. It depends, but you have to do the
The
research, you
research.
know. Yeah, because there are bigger ones, there are smaller ones, there are, you know, there are multi-family offices. It's a very, as you said, it's
Hmm.
kind of like a very, I don't know, unknown world, right?
Yeah.
But it's growing. I mean, there are many family offices that do a lot of impact. They care. I mean, actually, there are many. For example, I have the opportunity to talk to fund of funds
Hmm.
that only invests in ocean solution, ocean VCs. You know, like VCs that
Okay.
invest in
Very
companies
specific. Yeah.
that, yeah, that generate create solutions for
Hmm.
the whole like ocean issues. You know, so so he told me that his puppies are, a lot of them, of course, they are family offices uh, with families that actually care about
About the oceans.
the
Yeah.
whole, yeah, the ocean, and the whole like taking care of the ecosystem, you know. So that
Interesting.
happens a lot.
Which countries do you find that not have the highest amount, but are more receptive to all this, to raising funds, to working with companies, to getting things off the ground overall in Europe?
You mean
Do you
like
think, for example, do you think the Spanish market is good for companies launching startups, or they should actually go and look out for investment in other countries?
Well, I think that the Spanish startup ecosystem is growing a lot.
Hmm.
You know, like we are, for example, we have these hubs like Malaga is becoming into this very techie hub. You
Hmm.
know, we have events like South Summit that gather all the the most relevant startups in the southern region of Europe, and also Latin America. I think Spain has this
Strong connection,
strength
right?
strength
Yeah.
compared to other European countries, which is Latin America.
Hmm.
You know, like Latin American companies really want to come to Spain and either maybe learn from the ecosystem, no?
Hmm.
And also there's the Latin American LPs,
Yeah.
who invest in Spain, which are there are like a lot of them. It's not necessarily great. I mean, from my point of view as a Latin American person, I'm from Bolivia, so you would think that, I mean, the investments should be done where where they are needed the most, right?
Yeah.
So from an impact point of view, which is the world that I love, there's a lot to be done in Latin America. So, but on the other side, I mean, it's about like certainty, about you knowing that that there's like this very strong regulation behind all the investments, etc.
Hmm.
No, but in America we do have a lot. I don't know how familiarized you're with Latin America, but I mean we do have really interesting countries with very interesting and attractive ecosystems for startups. Like for example, there's Chile, there's Mexico, there's Brazil. I don't know that much about Brazil. Like to me,
Hmm.
Brazil has always been like a completely different world. But when you think about Latin America, like Chile, Mexico,
Hmm.
Colombia,
Yeah.
there's a very interesting startup world going, like happening there, right?
What about the regulations? Is it as flexible as it is in some countries in Europe, or is it very cumbersome to actually launch a company overall there?
Well, I know in Chile is
Hmm.
a very you can launch a company in one day.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
pretty good.
Yeah, that's at least that it was that way a few years ago when I was living there.
Hmm.
We had this startup Chile. We had all this regulation. I think in terms of innovation, Chile did a great job, on like making things easy for startups to start. I remember the conversation was that it was a bit hard to, like, if you failed, then it
Yeah.
was a bit hard. Like the conversation was different, no? But to start, you could do it, and there's like a lot of innovation going on in Chile and on that way.
Hmm.
But it's a very small market, right?
Yeah.
So the normal path for a company to keep growing is to move to Mexico. Mexico
Hmm.
is a big market with many opportunities, but and I think Mexico is also a great example. I'm not that familiarized. I mean, I don't know that much about the Mexican regulation,
Hmm.
but I can tell you that the Chilean companies that want to grow,
They normally go to
um,
Mexico.
they go to Mexico. They go
Interesting.
to Mexico and they do well.
Laura, tell us a bit more about your podcast because you also have a podcast. So, uh, what do you talk about on your podcast?
Well, my podcast is my baby.
Hmm.
I what I do is I interview people from the investors world, like it
Hmm.
can be LPs or GPs, to talk about ESG and impact.
Hmm.
And this is a very complicated topic because you can see that everyone has a different idea on it, because it's kind of new, and it's very interesting to discuss about it with different uh, people with different perspectives and different, for example, okay, yes, I was saying before, if you talk to an impact fund, I mean, they are gonna talk to you more on, what impact is for them,
Hmm.
how they is important to like look for I don't know, solutions that are gonna make this like a better world, and not necessarily focus on data availability, which is what ESG is more about.
Hmm.
Like ESG is more about like reporting. No, it's about your ability to gather the information and show
Hmm.
that you are doing something about these environmental, social, and governance issues.
Hmm.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that you are like that you care that much about impact. I mean, there's this example that one of my interviewees gave me once, and said that, for example, Shell has a very great ESG performance. They
Hmm.
are actually like top something, like top five in ESG reporting, but they are an oil company, but they do this. They do really good job
Mm-hmm.
in delivering the data. Like they do, and that's the thing. Like they are very good in gathering, delivering,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe measuring. But in the end, they are they do what they do.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit like the difference, and I think that with this whole like greenwashing,
Mm-hmm.
there has been a lot of misuse of ESG,
Yeah.
misuse of impact, and these and terms that are very important
Mm-hmm.
are now being like
Mainstreamed, and everyone uses
not
them.
only mainstream, but they are being like under scrutiny.
Yeah.
I mean, you see what's happening in the US. Like, I mean, you don't want to say, I mean, some people, I mean, rather not say that they care for ESG because it might be bad for you to do it. So, and it's because we are like, because of all this, like, greenwashing, because of this lack of understanding and of agreement
Mm-hmm.
on the terms, no? But for example, there's this ESGVC in here in Europe that it's like like a group partnership of all the most relevant VC funds in Europe, but worldwide now. I mean, it started
Mm-hmm.
in Europe, and what they do is they are trying to set some ground rules, some basic information and frameworks for founders to be able to report ESG data.
Mm-hmm.
Because the problem in the VC world, in the startup world actually, is that you cannot ask a founder to be compliant with the regulation if they don't even know, like for
What the
example,
regulations look
if
like?
you
Yeah.
ask them, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, what's your diversity and inclusion policy? And it's like, okay, we have two people, like it doesn't make, and they have to start kind of like not making up, but just trying to fill in the blanks with
Mm-hmm.
whatever information they can actually have or come to their minds, instead of actually thinking of what is our approach, I mean, or what can we do about this,
Yeah.
like environmental, social, and governance issues from within our business,
Mm-hmm.
like from within their business that we are in, and what we are trying to do, instead of trying to like make up and say, yeah, yeah, we're gonna hire 10 women, just to make sure we are very gender balanced company.
It's a really hard one, to be honest, because I find that, for example, the events that I run, it's me and my business partner, and we're both men, but we had all the interns were all females, so technically we would overfill the criteria for everything, because we actually had a lot of female staff, so it was well balanced in that sense. But at the same time, now that we just had interns, now they've all left, it was like, oh, now we're stuck with the same problem again. And it's a hard one to do, because you don't want to be in a position where you're not complying with things, but at the same time it's like, well, what can we do to make us compliant? Should we just hire someone even though we might not need someone, just to make sure that we're compliant? So it's a tricky one, isn't it, for most companies just starting out?
Yeah, and then if you analyze your own information, like with a like ESG lens, right?
Hmm.
Then okay, yes, you have like you're very gender balanced, or maybe you have even more female employees than male. But then if you go with through the numbers of seniority,
Hmm.
then you're not doing well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's very complicated, but in general, I think that what ESGVC is trying to do is to give frameworks for portfolio companies in general,
Hmm.
to actually report on what's relevant
Yeah.
for them and at the point that they are. And you were mentioning AI at the beginning of the
Hmm.
conversation, or when we were not recording yet. I mean, AI is another thing. It's also because AI is about investing in AI, but also about you being able to use AI to do your job, your work, and also about how you are in being how careful you're being with AI
Hmm.
in your own company.
Yeah.
Like setting up
Rules.
ground
Yeah.
rules now, so in the future you don't have problems, no? So I think that that's another topic that I know that ESGVC is trying to give founders some base knowledge. And what's interesting about ESGVC is that they started because many of their portfolio companies were asking them for help
Hmm.
on this, you know?
Yeah.
And this is, and that's the thing, you know, they do want to do something about it, but they don't know where to begin. So, and I think
It's
that's
hard,
a
yeah.
problem with regulation, right?
I find it very hard because even here when I'm running my business is me and my business partner, we always struggle with the fact that as much as we have no issues whatsoever in being as diverse as we can possibly be, sometimes it is hard to be as diverse as we can possibly be because it's just the two of us. We don't have anyone from a different background, and that's also okay if that happens. But that's it's a complicated position to be in a lot of times, to be honest, and because you don't want to be seen as someone who's not, but at the same time, you also want to be open to new ideas and making sure that everyone gets a fair chance and opportunity. So yeah, it's a tricky world sometimes to navigate in. Yeah.
Yeah, but also you have to ask yourself, like, why is that important? Like, why would that be important for your company? You know,
Hmm.
and it's not just about being able to say yes, we are very diverse, you know, but and also being able to say maybe that's not what I can do right now, report on right now, because it's not relevant. We are just two people,
Yeah.
and but maybe what are the what are the data, what's the data that you actually could report on, and makes it could make sense with your specific business, you
Hmm.
know. So I think that's the idea, in like that we should have in general, right? We cannot measure everyone with the same with the same rule. We cannot assume that everyone has to deliver data under the same reporting requirements.
Hmm.
And I think that's the problem, because in the end you say, okay, you have to fill this, and if you don't have this information, you have to say, I don't have it, but you have to explain why not, you know.
Yeah.
And then in the end it's like you don't want to leave anything blank, you know. So you just start like getting nervous and think, okay, what can we do about this, you know. And
Yeah.
it's a waste of time and
It's a waste
energy,
of time. Yeah,
and
it is.
it's useless. So, but I think that in general, this is something that it's. I mean, we know there's something to be improved,
Hmm.
and there are a lot of conversations on these matters, and I think they'll fix them, right? This is like just the beginning, no?
Yeah, we're getting the the game started, and it gets better as we go along, which is normal with all
Yes.
these things. And
I always say that the good thing is that we're talking about it, you know?
yeah.
So the more we talk about it, I mean, even if it goes mainstream, I mean, even if it ends up being like a very, you know, way too,
Hmm.
you know, like we speak too much about this and people get like bored of it. Just the fact that we, for example, that we know that, okay, it is important to have like a diverse team, not only talking about like having women, men, like having people from everywhere. You know, we now think it is important. So maybe tomorrow, when you have to make the decision,
Hmm.
you would like pay attention to it. Not today because you don't need it today. You're just two people, but tomorrow, yes. You know, and I think that's what this is about. It's about, okay, being able to like put the like the need on the table. You know, so
Hmm.
in the future when you have to make decisions, you know that you have to take that into account.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it
I
makes
mean,
a
we
big
always
difference.
struggle. Huh? We always struggle at the conferences when we are looking for female partners
Hmm.
from, you know, venture capital funds or private equity, or, you know, it's not easy. And we are trying to at least have one woman on stage
Hmm.
for each panel, and we struggle with it.
You I've been lucky to have you as a guest on the panel we've had in Madrid on our first event. I think you were the only lady on stage. Unfortunately, we couldn't get anyone else. In the UK, surprisingly, it's actually super easy. We never struggle with that. We always manage to get a really good ratio,
Hmm.
and it's something that for us we don't even see it as a necessity. It's more that it I should put this. It's not even let's fill it up half half. It's more okay. Who can we find to talk about these topics? And it naturally occurs that way, which is great because we don't even need to think about it, right? But I get what you're saying. In other countries, it is a big issue. You need to actually look out for people. Okay, can we find another female speaker, please, or someone from a diverse background here? Because there are people there. We want to listen to them, but sometimes they're hard to find, which is annoying. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that organic balance
Yeah.
is, I mean, the ideal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then you don't choose the best one. You don't maybe
Exactly.
you know, in general, this is happening in general, like for even like senior positions in general, no? Like instead of choosing the best one, they're choosing the second best one because it's a female, like and stuff like that, which is an issue. It's an issue, and it's a bit of like it's a pity, but it's also good, because that's the only way you can actually start like having more like real balance, no? But I think that, I mean, your situation is awesome. It's great, and that's the ideal world in general. No, I mean, in the future, the idea is to for these topics to be very organic, that people don't have to talk about them
Yeah.
anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because they are not an issue anymore. You're not gonna like wonder if like and that everyone are like from the same country and everyone's are like they're from the same university from the no, but everyone's like from all over the world and etc.
Exactly.
But I think that the fact that we're talking about it now is like just the beginning to end up on a more like
We should talk,
on
but I
the
think we
future. They
should talk
should do
about
that.
it more. Yeah, we should talk about
Yeah.
it more because it shouldn't be an issue. Like we shouldn't be having conversations. For example, here obviously there's different family protection laws, but we should be having a conversation about why women are still forced out of jobs to take care of kids in the UK. Like that shouldn't even be happening in the first place. And for me, as as a man, it really upsets me that this is even happening. It shouldn't,
Don't get
because
me
it's
started on that
right. It's
issue.
things like this, as a company, when I look at, not thankfully, but I haven't had the opportunity to hire anyone at that stage of their lives yet. But it's not an issue for me in the slightest. Oh, you have family? Yeah, of course, go pick them up from school, go do whatever, work whenever you can. That's completely fine by me. I don't care. That's how it should be. I guess for other companies, it's a big issue, but yeah, it's just one of
No,
those things.
but it's not in the UK and like everywhere. Like this conciliation. It's like a myth. It doesn't exist. In the end, like when you become a mother, you have to you have to make like decisions, and it's not easy to find places where they
Yeah.
actually like give you that flexibility and understand. It's part of it should be like everyone should be able to have that flexibility. I don't know, are you do you have kids? No.
I do, yeah. I have a son, but
Yes.
yeah, but no, but I know how hard it is, and also I see with, for example, my sister is she has a very high position in a pharmaceutical company, and I can see how she needs the flexibility, and I can also see they always give her the flexibility to take care of her own child, and that makes a big difference. And I always think, what would happen if she was, for example, to live in the UK, and it wouldn't work. They wouldn't give them that type of flexibility, and it's really a shame, because ultimately having families, having kids, it benefits us all, right? I'm not saying let's have as many kids as possible. I'm saying that's the way that we as a species work. We reproduce, we have kids, and we should take care of the younger generation. So we, as business owners, we should take care of people with families. It's just the way it works. But yeah, it's always
Why
complicated.
do you think that the UK has this like? Why do you think? I mean, because this is an issue like everywhere. I know there are some countries with, for example, better policies in terms of maternity or paternity leave.
Hmm.
Here in Spain we have a good policy in terms of like we like both parents get the same. You
Yeah.
know, um, but in the end, when it comes to like okay, the job themselves, like there's no like you're always in a
It's,
hurry. You will always have to be like like owing time.
I think it's a matter of people being aware that there is a difference. There are different ways of that we as a society will have, a man and woman will have different career paths and different how should I put it, different moments in their career, and that's perfectly fine. And we should accommodate for them. For example, I read a very crazy statistics that said that a female worker in reality ends up making less money overall during the duration of her career. First, because she never negotiates as high as a man. Then, because she only applies for jobs where she knows for 100% she can actually perform. And then, because whenever she has kids, she then takes back a step. So, if she never negotiates and she never changes job, she actually ends up with less money by the end of the career than a guy would. And that's just crazy. And it's crazy that we don't teach young women about that and say, actually, when you walk in a room, you might not be able to feel 100% of the requirements of a job. But if you feel 70% or 60%, tell you what, just go for it. Just say you want a job. And when you negotiate, just go for the highest bracket you can think of, because that's the way you should do. And yeah, the things like this that we should be talking about, it should be happening right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and hopefully in the future that will be, again,
Yeah.
won't be a topic anymore. But now, today, that's an issue. I mean, as you were saying, I mean, I'm also very lucky to have like that flexibility, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but I did have to make some decisions in order
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
to be able to have that flexibility, you know. So and making decisions, I mean, it means that you have like some transitioning
Yeah.
times that are not easy,
Not at
you
all.
know.
Yeah.
They are not easy, and that's the problem. And some people, I mean, don't even have the opportunity to take those transition times, no. And they're so that's I think that's the most complicated thing.
It's a
So
luxury, I think, to be able to have the support network to make the decisions you need to make, to be able to have a support network that allows you to grow, and to have the down moments that you have when you're growing. That's very important, and that's hard. That's a blessing to have, and you need to be like to have that. But yeah,
yeah. Well,
Laura,
but all that it's about ESG and impact.
it is. Yeah.
Like it's about like ESG is like the more companies are reporting on these topics, the more uncomfortable they will feel if they see that they are not improving.
Mhm.
So from that part, that's the ESG part. Like that's really great, you know. And from the more like from the impact part, it's about like creating companies like solutions that will actually, you know, help to I don't know, like pursue or I mean achieve a more, you know, balanced world.
Balance. Yeah. There's a really cool movie by Michael Moore, the guy who did Bowling for Columbine, and he does this it's fascinating comparison between the way that people work in the U.S. and the way that people work in Italy. And he says, well, in Italy, you get 2 hours for lunch, you get paid vacations, you get paid medical insurance, or paid healthcare. And when you have kids, you can take time off to take care of the kids. You can take time off to, spend some time with them when they were born. And then the U.S. workers think, oh my God, is this for real? Yes, it's perfectly normal to have that. And then they tell the Italian workers, this is what we have in the U.S. And they said, this is supposed to be a joke. You mean you cannot take, vacation days? No. You cannot take time for lunch? No. You need to pay for your own health care? Yes. Like, oh, that's really weird. And it's things like this. We should actually be talking about, as societies, like, what do we actually want for our society? But, it's a much bigger conversation, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, but it's happening more often,
Yeah,
so it's good.
it's
You
good.
know, I
It's
mean,
good.
the fact that we ended up talking about this,
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
it
Tells you a lot.
means that it's an issue. So
Exactly.
it's going to be solved in the future, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. Laura, if people want to reach out to you, how can they do so?
I think that my LinkedIn, I'm very, very responsive on LinkedIn in general.
Mm-hmm.
So you just can add me on LinkedIn and message me. I'm there.
All right.
It's my
Well,
name, Laura Iriarte Zabalaga. I mean, my full name. So they can just look for me.
sounds good. Laura, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Ricardo. It was nice and great having this conversation with you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.